Hello, everybody!
Turn this up in my headphones, Charles.
Turning it up. Hello, everybody, one and all. Welcome to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast. My name is Charles, and with me today, as always, is my lifelong friend and co-host, Dylan.
I'm ready to talk some fantasy with my friend, Charles.
I am ready to talk some fantasy with my friend as well, Dylan, but not just any fantasy today, because today we are talking about the fantasy that we're going to be talking about in the very near future. This is a what's next for Friends Talking Fantasy. You know, we've got a lot of series in the works. We got a lot of ideas that we're cooking up, and we've just started scheduling so many different things that we need to take a step back on this episode and remind all of our listeners, hey, here's what to expect from Friends Talking Fantasy in the very near future, because there's a lot going on right now.
Yes, there is, Charles, and nothing gets you more excited than an episode about the upcoming schedule. I mean, this is a dream come true for you, Charles.
I am ecstatic, guys, because let me tell you, this schedule has been quite the experience for us. We're trying to do so many things. You know, some OG fans might remember we used to do this thing called Friends Pitching Fantasy. It feels like so long since we've done one of those, and I love to do those so much. But the last time we did a Friends Pitching Fantasy, we wound up, 2 times ago, we wound up deciding on reading Wheel of Time and every First Law Universe novel, of which there are currently 8, and there's a 9th one coming out in September, and then Sharp Ends if you count that. Yeah, that's a total of over 20 books. It's like 25 books that we had agreed to read at that time, which was a bit of a challenge for us scheduling wise. Usually we've done like trilogies or standalones or things like that. And then there's been a whole bunch of other stuff along the way. So today we're just going to put it out there in the air, talk about a few of these books that we're in the middle of reading, that we are going to be reading very soon, that books that we are very excited to talk about, and maybe a few other exciting segments along the way for you guys to expect.
Ooh. Nice. Well, I have no idea I really do have an understanding of generally what books we're going to be reading. In what order? No idea. In when, why? Those kind of things are a little bit tougher for me, but luckily I've got Charles here who's on top of that schedule, and I'm excited because I'll probably learn more about what's next.
Yeah, Dylan, take some notes here,
fantasy.
Because we're going to make sure that you have to read some of these things so that we can talk about them.
I don't take notes, Charles.
Because we have got quite an ambitious schedule ahead of us. But first, we just need to say that our Shadow of the Gods episode has just dropped, featuring Sam Buckingham from the Buckingham blog. Guys, you gotta go check that out. The excitement around that for us, like, this has been months of planning. We've had that one on the books, and so to finally put that one out there for all of you to hear, huge. And the Sam voice reveal, guys, this is big. When you're a famous blogger like Sam is, no one knows what you sound like. I think most people probably tuned in for that than to hear us talk.
I can tell from the social media reaction and from chatting with Sam some that was a thing of interest for some reason. I was like, I want Sam to develop a complex about her voice, but I think it's been a very positive reception. She got some compliments on social media.
Yeah, it's more to do with we all feel like we know her so well. She's so prolific on Twitter that it's like, we've actually never heard her speak before. We've read her
That's
words.
What it is.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's not anything about what she sounds like. It's more along the lines of, we've been tweeting back and forth for a year. But we've never communicated outside the written word, so that was huge. And it was so.
And I'm sure a lot of people were very excited about the incredible book we talked about, Charles. I mean, The Shadow of the Gods is like I see it as, as you said, Charles. It's hot off the press. And I really see it as it's a game changer at least for me and my taste in the fantasy genre. And I think it has a chance to be a big, I'm sure John Gwynne has already been doing a lot of this kind of stuff of finding this balance and being one of the leaders and taking the genre to a direction that's a pretty awesome fusion of some of these old school mysticism elements and world building, those kind of stuff with these more modern feeling elements of the complex, morally great characters and all that kind of stuff. And for me, that's a book. In case you didn't check out that episode because you didn't want spoilers, which by the way, we did do like a first half of no spoilers.
We did.
Yes. In case you didn't check that out, you can hear me talk more about, and me and Sam and Charles talk more about in a spoiler-free way at the start of that episode. And you can hear how much we're freaking gushing about the incredible book and John Gwynne, who's doing an amazing work over there and being super nice to all of us on social media too.
Yes, he's been very kind and supportive, for which we appreciate that. So guys, check out Shadow of the Gods and then check out that episode. So many fantastic things coming together in that episode. Very proud of that one and very thankful to both John Gwynne and to Sam. So now we need to look forwards. The next book that I actually have just finished, and I know, Dylan, you've read it before, and I'm sure you're blazing through it right now in time for this weekend, because we are going to be discussing the second standalone in Joe Abercrombie's trilogy of standalones, which is The Heroes. The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. And Dylan, I don't know if you remember, but when we did Best Served Cold and we announced we were going to do The Heroes next, I was like, there's no way that Joe Abercrombie, when he titles a book The Heroes, is writing a book about noble deeds and virtuistic heroes. And am I correct? Well, we'll just have to listen to that episode and see. But I was like, I was both surprised and not surprised at the same time as to where the direction of that book went. And we are going to have a ton to talk about in that book. That book has got me really excited to talk, but I want to save it, because we're not rehearsers. Our best energy is going to be our first take, so we'll let that one slide over. But just to say, we read Best Served Cold recently. We're going to be discussing The Heroes next week, guys. That's going to be awesome. And then we're going to go right into Red Country after that. So Heroes next week, Red Country 3 weeks from now. And this is all to say that the plan is to read through the Age of the Age of Madness trilogy as well. So over the past couple months, we read the First Law trilogy. We're in the progress of the standalones, and then we are going right into Age of Madness in time for one of the, outside of Shadow of the Gods, this is probably the other big release of the year, and that is Wisdom of Crowds, is the third and final book in the Age of Madness trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, and it brings home a lot of these other stories as well. So I've never read it. Dylan, you're all caught up.
Yeah.
So
yes,
and you sing very high praises, so I'm super pumped to get into that one.
Me too. Oh my God, Charles. I have so much pent up energy of just years and years. And I mean, how long ago did we first read the First Law series? And then I immediately was like, okay, I'm reading the rest of this thing. And there was this gap after Best Served Cold where you were like, hey, I'm going to try some other stuff. I'm going to, Dylan, you're going to go blaze ahead, but I'm going to be like, let me read some classics. Let me read, we're talking about some of these older works like The Black Company and Grimdark and things like that. You went a little more to the roots, and I've been like waiting to talk. I'm literally it's taking all of the constraint I have not to start talking to you right now about the heroes and the Red Country.
I have so much to say about the heroes. I've heard great things about Red Country, and I've heard even crazier things about the Age of Madness. So, Abercrombie, in the history of this show, of Friends Talking Fantasy, Abercrombie has just impressed me so much. Such a standout voice in the genre, and I'm so excited. Like, we have dedicated a lot of episodes and a lot of hours on this show to Abercrombie, and that's only going to continue because I still have so much to say. This book is like, I don't want to get into it because I don't want to spoil it, but it's so good. For all you Abercrombie fans out there, we're going to have a lot to say. So that is...
Maybe 2 episodes, Charles? If it ends up going that... we don't want to promise things, but if it goes that long... I really think we could do 1,
but we could easily go into 2. We'll see how it goes, but this story is not as long or convoluted as... convoluted in the best way possible of Best Served Cold. It's a pretty simple story, but we'll talk about it. We haven't gotten that far in the planning, but either way, 1 episode, 2 episodes, I'm open to it all.
Yeah, I don't really think about Abercrombie's work as typically being very simple. I'm sure we'll have a lot to say, but there's going to be a ton of complexity to... because that's... Okay. I'm going to let us move on.
Let's move on because we have another big series that we have to tackle, and that is the Wheel of Time. Last time we talked Wheel of Time, we were talking book 4 with Sandra Gibbons. Guys, you have to go back and listen to that. That was a whole boatload of fun. We got to talk about all these awesome characters and some of these character tropes and some of these character breakthroughs that have occurred in the Wheel of Time. And we will be reading The Fires of Heaven, which is book 5 of the Wheel of Time, around mid-July. We've got like the week of July 19th as kind of the placeholder for Wheel of Time 5. And we just got to the point we were doing them in like 3 book bursts, and it was very clear that it was too much in one go. So what we're going to do is we're going to spread Wheel of Time out to like a book a month. And I think that will be more than enough Wheel of Time for everybody. So we're going to get in July, we're going to get The Fires of Heaven, and then I'm sure we will have book 6 cooking in August. But that is another series that you have to look forward to, all you Wheel of Time fans. It's been a while now. We've read like several books in between book 4. So I'm excited to kind of get back into it. I'm ready for more. I am. I don't know how you're feeling, Dylan, about jumping back into Wheel of Time after this little hiatus we've had.
Yeah, I think Wheel of Time hiatuses are helpful for building my excitement with that series, because you do kind of start missing the world and all of that. And I think Wheel of Time gets overwhelming to me sometimes, the idea of reading that many books. But when I'm doing it, I find so much to love. I want to see what happens to Elaine as a character, because we had Benjamin, who's a reviewer over at Literature and Lo-Fi, who wrote a review and kind of, he liked the arc, but he was like messaging me and trying to not spoil things and being like, dude, like, I'm really curious to hear what you think about Elaine's art. So awesome. I'm like, so I'm excited about that. There's those characters you latch onto, and I'm excited about seeing where they go. Egwene,
and we've got a few, ideas for potential collaborations that we're flirting with. We have so many exciting, spin-off Wheel of Time episode ideas that aren't about books. We did a pretty fun character tier list from books 1 to 3. It might be fun to revisit that at some point, but there's so much Wheel of Time content to be had, and that fan base is a lot of fun to interact with. So I'm looking forward to getting back into the Wheel of Time sphere next month. That's going to be a blast. And yep, one book a month from Wheel of Time. Maybe when we get to the final 3, the Sanderson ones, maybe we'll do those in a bunch, but we'll see. We'll see. Because we'll only be 3 books away, and it's Sanderson, and we're winding up, so it's like maybe we just crank them out. But until then, a book a month, I think, will keep us through the year here with Wheel of Time. Very exciting. And guys, anything to say about Wheel of Time before we move on?
Nope.
Okay.
I've said no. I'm just kidding. No, I've said it. I am excited. I am. I've definitely been thinking about a few of the characters and where I want to see them going. I think it's like a part of me wants to just know how it all ends. So this kind of like, there's so much with Wheel of Time that I'm like, okay, we're reading July and then later. So I'm like, but got to take the journey, not just the destination, Charles. So this journey is one I'm very excited to be on with you when it comes to Wheel of Time.
Me as well. What's interesting about Wheel of Time? It's kind of changed the way we've talked about a lot of our most recent buddy reads. It's almost like we can't help but compare a lot of these books that we're reading now to Wheel of Time, because Wheel of Time is almost like the gold standard of like classic fantasy, and it's like, so how did you do something different from Wheel of Time?
It's like
epic fantasy.
Epic fantasy is, or I mean, Lord of the Rings is probably the gold standard or whatever, but Wheel of Time I feel like takes us. It's this very important point in fantasy history. That's probably the thing I most enjoy about reading Wheel of Time is getting that context, because then we do start. I mean, even our Shadow of the Gods episode, we couldn't help ourselves but start talking about like, oh, if Robert Jordan wrote this, it would be like this, because it feels like that was such an influential work. So I do feel like Wheel of Time, probably what I most gain from it is that context. And then, of course, while you're reading it, you do I do get attached to particular characters a lot. So yeah, it's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. But you know what else I'm looking forward to, Dylan? And that is another release that will be coming hot off the presses this month, the month of June, and that is Artifact Space by Miles Cameron, aka Christian Cameron, over on Twitter. And this is one that we've had on our radar for several months. I'm a huge fan of I don't know to call him Christian or Miles, but Christian Cameron over on Twitter. He has a series called Writing Fighting, which he's super knowledgeable about medieval weapons and warfare and armor, and he releases these like 2-minute videos where he's all suited up and highlighting different techniques or equipment with the understanding of how to help you add a new perspective or some nice spice and flavor into your writing for a fantasy novel. And it's super awesome. But he's coming out with this science fiction book, and he's said on Writing Fighting that a lot of the like fighting and combat in this science fiction book is inspired by his medieval knowledge. So we're super excited about what that potentially means. And when someone's an expert in this kind of combat style like Miles Cameron is, then we are more than excited to get into the book and see what he has to offer. And I'm actually getting ready to crack the cover on that because I don't know, the book is releasing on June 24th. We have an advanced copy, which is a huge deal for us. This is a big one. So I can't wait any longer. I'm going to be cracking the cover on that very soon. And we may drop like a spoiler-free teaser hype episode right before its release, which the book, again, is released on June 24th. And then we'll do a full-on book discussion in July after, everyone's had some time to read it and digest it. That's when we're going to drop the full book discussion.
I'm so pumped.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. Yeah. I mean, and it's always fun when we get to dive into some science fiction on here, because fantasy will always be my first love.
Yes.
And every once in a while, though, mixing it up and getting a different perspective. And we know when you're dealing with Christian Cameron, you're going to be getting some good stuff. So I'm just super excited to check out what he's got on offer with Artifact Space. And yeah, so pumped. He's such a cool on Twitter and all that. I see you interacting with him on Twitter there, Charles, and you two having some fun. So
no, he's very
so
kind.
Nice.
We've had a nice rapport in
his
this last
videos are
couple of
great.
fightings, and he's super generous with his time and his knowledge. So I'm just trying to take advantage of that, and also it's just been really nice to chat with him. So he's super fun, and he's pretty buddy with John Gwynn as well. So it's become this nice little family on Twitter, and it's been a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward, now that we finished Shadow of the Gods, to catch Artifact Space when it comes out and just be at the beginning of these two books as they're being released. It's exciting. We haven't really done that on this show too much. We did the release of the Poppy War, the third and final book in the Poppy War.
Yeah, the Burning God.
Yes. We were able to turn that one out, and that was a lot of fun. And then now we have these two. So trying to do more of that. And again, we're also planning to do it with Wisdom of Crowds for Joe Abercrombie. So, man, a lot of exciting cutting-edge fantasy here on the Friends Talking Fantasy podcast, guys. It's super exciting. And you mentioned science fiction, Dylan, because it's true. We hardly ever read science fiction on the show. The only other time that we've read science fiction, if you remember, Dylan, how could we forget, was when we read All Systems Red, book 1 of the Murderbot Diaries. And do you remember, if you can recall, we had the amazing Fiction Fans featured on that episode. That was an absolute blast. You know, my parents, they're not fantasy readers. They don't read fantasy, but they'll check into the show because they're interested in what we're doing over here. And they were like, oh, I really like that episode where you had the two ladies on. They sounded so smart. And I was like, oh, you must be talking about Fiction Fans. Like, yeah. It's like, did you read the book? No, but it sounded great. You know, that's like, we've had 120 episodes come out, and that's the only one that got them to like text me being like, hey, that episode was good. So it's like, so it's got the endorsement of my parents. So Fiction Fans, super excited. Come back on anytime.
Yeah, Sarah and Lily were phenomenal on that episode, and I'm pumped about that. You got so caught up in complimenting them and talk about your wonderful parents, Charles, that I think you forgot to say what the actual thing that's coming next is.
Yes, the reason I brought that up. There's a reason I was spinning around that point.
We love gushing about Fiction Fans podcast, Sarah and Lily, but it's because we're bringing them up on the What's Next for Friends Talking Fantasy episode, because at the end of June, we're going to be going on to their podcast to talk. That'll be when we record. I don't know when they're going to release, but probably like the next Wednesday would be my guess, but no promises. So at the end of June, we're going to be recording an episode talking about some Terry Pratchett.
Wow.
Charles. And Terry Pratchett's one of the bigger gaps in our reading schedule. There's been some talk about Witcher getting involved as well. Like the Last Wish, which we read a while back.
Love The Last Wish.
So I think it's going to be trying to talk about both of those books. You've heard us potentially talk about The Last Wish already on our podcast, but of course we'll have some fresh hot takes, Charles, to add that'll be new on, and just a conversation once it gets going with Sarah and Lily. You know it's gonna be a great time.
Yeah,
and then Pratchett, Weird Sisters.
Yes,
and that's Sarah's and Lily's too, but we see more of it from Sarah on Twitter. So like wheelhouse and chatting Pratchett with Fiction Fans, Charles, that's a dream come true.
I mean, if you're gonna talk Pratchett in like the fantasy pod sphere, my ideal area to do that would be with Sarah and Lily over on the Fiction Fans podcast, because they have released a lot of content about it. They did a where to start with Terry Pratchett, and in Terry Pratchett style, they do not recommend the first book in terms of publication date.
Yeah.
So definitely check that out. But then also pick up Weird Sisters and give that a read, because we're going to be reading that very soon before we go on to their show. This will be our first time on their show, and I'm looking forward to that, being the guest. That's going to be very exciting. And, you know, they finally got me around to where I'm like, okay, I'm reading Terry Pratchett now. It's been long enough. Let's get it going. And I've read The Color of Magic, which was the first one, which is the one they say not to start with. So now that I have them as like the shaman to guide my spiritual journey through Terry Pratchett with the Weird Sisters here, I feel like I'm in good hands, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too, Charles. It's interesting because we've each read one Pratchett book so far.
Yep.
You read The Color of Magic, and I read Mort.
Yes.
And neither of us, we were fine with it. And it was like, I thought Mort, I liked it. I guess there was a part of me that was like, Pratchett gets so much love out there on social media and all this kind of stuff that I think when I liked it, I was almost disappointed because I was expecting to love it.
Yes.
And I feel like you probably had a similar experience with The Color of Magic. And what's interesting is that, like, where to start with Pratchett episode from Fiction Fans, which we highly suggest checking out. Both of our choices were deemed not good places to start by Sarah and Lily. So I think that has us, in some ways it was like, oh, why are we like, why did we pick the wrong ones?
Yeah.
But in other ways we were like, okay, well, that's a good sign, because if we liked those books, then hopefully we will find ourselves loving the Weird Sisters book. So I'm very hopeful, and maybe this will be igniting our passion for Pratchett.
Yes, it's very promising, I will say, that everything is kind of going in line with what Fiction Fans is saying to expect. And this is this book that they recommend of all of the books in the Discworld series, of which there are many. Yes. This is the one they were like, guys, you got to read this one. So super excited to do that. And they're just making really good stuff over there. So I'm just happy to be a part of what's going on over there. So looking forward to that. And then, guys, so we're going to read Artifact Space. We're going to put that out there into the world. And then we're going to be ready, finally, after months and months, to get into another Friends Pitching Fantasy. Wow. Yes. I feel like...
What's interesting...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Charles. I feel like when we first started getting like social media attention and things like that, it was like Friends Pitching Fantasy was a big part of what made people actually like think, oh, what they're doing over there might be interesting or whatever. And so I kind of think of Friends Pitching Fantasy as like the flagship program of our... I don't know how to say it. Like the flagship episode is like, it's like, I don't know. I feel like it's everything we want to be about, which is like these fun conversations about books, like making it about gushing about the books that we both love and want the other person to read, or want ourselves to read or whatever. It's like, I think Friends Talking Fantasy, I don't know. It's like, for me, FPF, Friends Pitching Fantasy, that is what it's very quintessential what we like to do on here. So I always get so pumped about it, and I feel like other people tend to see that too, and I love that. So it's very, very exciting.
Yes. Friends Pitching Fantasy. So excited to get into it. But I feel like it's been so many months since we've dropped a Friends Pitching Fantasy, and our social media world has changed so much, and the episodes that we put out, and then we've read so many books since the last one we put out. I feel like there's going to be a lot of people who aren't even going to know what we're talking about when we say Friends Pitching Fantasy. So I'm super excited to bring it back into the fold. It's been way too long, and I'm super excited about my pitches, guys. Super excited. I've already got them planned, and it's killing me to have to wait like another month or so to release what they are into the public. But I will just say, we've done a lot of recommendations series episodes since the last time we did Friends Pitching Fantasy. You guys have recommended a ton of books, and there's some that have been recommended several times. And I've been taking notes, guys, and you will see that I've been taking notes when I drop some of these hot, exciting books onto the table at Friends Pitching Fantasy. And that's the other thing that I like about Friends Pitching Fantasy is the stakes. Like, we have to read that now. It's going to be a month of stuff that we're going to be involved in, too. So it's fun. It's fun, and I'm super excited. I know Dylan probably has a few series in mind that he's going to pitch. I can almost guess what he's going to pitch, but you always throw in a wild card in there. I'll say that to your credit.
I usually do. I think I've already said on the podcast which three I feel strongly about. I'll say that, so The Lies of Locke Lamora. At the very, or maybe the whole, I got to figure out, I guess, if I'm pitching The Lies of Locke Lamora or the whole Gentleman Bastard sequence. I feel like I got to just pitch the whole, or like the three books that are out. Just because the people need the catharsis of you reading all three of those books at this point after all the social media campaigns, the petition, Charles, the petition that Benjamin created with, there are double digits worth of signatures last I checked at the very least. So I'm thinking something from Sanderson, maybe even Stormlight.
The big one. Wow.
Gotta make it hard. Yeah. Because it's like, Charles, I feel like if I put anything but like top tier stuff, like that you have been wanting to read for a really long time, like Stormlight, if I put anything but that in the mix, you're just going to easy pick The Lies of Locke Lamora. So I owe it, Charles. I owe it to the listeners to put it up against some huge, heavy hitters and see if you have it in you to reject the Stormlight archives.
You just want me to jump from one fan base of getting on me to another. I see through you. I don't know why you have to torture me this way. But
I owe it to you, the listener.
Yes, be kind, listener, when I may or may not pick Stormlight. That's a series that I just feel like that fear of missing out never been higher than when, Stormlight took off last year with that recent release, and now just everyone definitively says it's Sanderson's best work, and I'm a huge Sanderson fan and haven't even cracked the cover on the first book of the Stormlight Archive, so I definitely feel like I'm missing out over there. But you'll have to wait, guys, for July when we finally release another Friends Pitching Fantasy. It's going to be so much fun. That's going to be an exciting day when we start getting that rolling. But until then, so many books along the way. We've got The Heroes. We've got Red Country, The Age of Madness, Fires of Heaven, Wheel of Time, Artifact Space, Fiction Fans Collab. Guys, we are just so excited that we were like, we need to just kind of share some of this with people so everyone knows what to expect, because it's going to be coming, and it's going to be coming fast from all directions. And we just wanted to make sure if you heard any of these books and you're like, oh, that sounds like fun, read along with us. We would love to have that conversation with you and be talking more about these books, not just to each other, but to everyone over on like the Twitter sphere, for example. That's my favorite place to chat around about these books. So yeah, that was the point of this episode. But Dylan, should we drop this last teaser here? I mean, we don't want to say too much because I think we want to wait to announce it. But what do you think we can say at this point?
Great question, Charles. I think that we can say we're working in collaboration with someone else in the fantasy community, an active person out on Twitter, to try to organize a read-along for a book that may have featured in that underrated book recommendations episode. Nice. And I'll say no more than that because Charles, I know you're the one who actually figures out what's organized already and what's not, but I know what's in the works, and I I'm very excited.
The only reason we're not explicitly saying what it is because it is a collaboration, and we want to make that announcement in tandem with the other collaborator. But we've already agreed to do it. We've already put it in the calendar. This is the first read along that the Friends Talking Fantasy has ever done, and we will be announcing that. It's got to be before the summer's over because we're going to start reading it this year and take it into next year. So super exciting to announce that. That's going to be a big one. And this is a series that we've been talking about for so long. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, our collaborator has a Discord too. So perhaps we'll find a way to get something going in there. I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to make any promises, but I'm like, I don't know. Oh, and that person has done read-alongs before and these kind of things. So yeah, we have some plans here that we just gotta cross some, what do they say? Cross some T's and dot some I's.
That's what they say.
Then we'll be able to bring that announcement in a more collaborative way.
Yes.
But we're gonna try to, just like get it with lots of people and all this kind of stuff. And it's a book that we feel is underrated.
Yes.
So yeah.
This is one I'm excited to read. I can't even. It's been like almost a decade coming for me to read this thing.
And it's a series.
Yeah.
I've been saying book, right?
Yeah,
series.
It's a series. So super, I mean, what kind of read along would it be if it was one book? So, it's a series, and we're super excited, and we're going to be announcing that in tandem with the collaborator that we're working with very soon. So be on the lookout for that, guys. And we got so many other exciting collaborations that we're in the talks of and scheduling. We've got bloggers, we've got YouTubers, we've got authors, guys, that we are in the chatters with to do collaborations with in the very near future. Things are going to be coming out quickly here in the Friends Talking Fantasy podcast, and I'm just so excited. And that's the reason, that's probably my favorite thing about this show, beyond getting to meet and talk regularly about fantasy with my lifelong friend and co-host Dylan, is to have found a place in this little community on the internet that's been so surprising. I was not expecting for this to happen to us, but we've made a lot of friends, a lot of great collaborators, and so many more friends to talk so much more fantasy with. That's always been our goal.
I know. That's been the whole thing, and I guess we didn't dare to dream when we first started this. So we're like, look, if we're doing this, it has to be okay with us that it's just going to be every week, you and me, Charles, on a Zoom call talking fantasy. And we're basically doing that anyway, just on a less organized way. Yeah. We were talking all the time on Zoom about fantasy and things like that. So we're like, okay, let's just do it. And we're okay with the idea that no one will ever listen. And the idea that people are listening is shocking to us, but also amazing. And we're so grateful. And the idea that people out on the internet, these amazing reviewers, authors, bloggers, all this amazing folks want to come on and chat with us. And then there's something cool too about a podcast where it's you get to be on a Zoom call and actually see them and hear their voice. And I know, and we just love that because it's that next level of friendship beyond just I don't know, I want to discount Twitter friendships and things like that, but it feels to us like getting even closer with folks and getting to know them even better.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, we love having folks on here when we get to collab. It's
we
just so
love
much
having
fun.
Folks on. We love collaborating. We've gotten the taste for it, and we're just gonna keep doing that. I don't want to say anything until it's 100% confirmed, but we are 90% confirmed on a whole bunch of stuff. So just a matter of scheduling, honestly, and it's going to
Charles's favorite.
It's really come in handy
he's
lately.
So excited, everyone.
Just going to get Sam on. She's in the UK. I'm in the Eastern time zone. Dylan's in Central Mountain time. So it's well, somehow we all have to find a period of our day that we're all available to record. And so that has been, a fun.
But
challenge.
What a rush, right, Charles?
What a rush!
What
a rush, guys! And then getting to talk about the schedule on the show. This is groundbreaking content here. This is the kind of stuff you're only going to get at the Friends Talking Fantasy podcast. And, along the way, we're going to find all kinds of kooky nonsense to bring into the episodes as well. Bringing back Friends Creating Fantasy, bringing back Who Would Win, doing character studies. Ooh. Favorite kinds of characters, favorite tropes, books in the genre, recommendation series. Those are some of my favorites to make when you guys submit book recommendations based on a certain criteria for us. We got to do another one of those. I don't know what it will be, but we should do one soon.
Yes. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we can put one out there if you feel strongly about those. But I love
them. No. I'm like, I've got a few spinning in my head that I don't want to get out. I don't need to take the listeners into my head, Charles. No. They don't deserve, or they don't. They deserve better, is what I'm trying to say, than to hear everything that's going on in here. But I'll save it for you off the. Yeah,
I want to do something about audiobooks too. Whether that's like we get recommendations or we just say our own. Because I've been listening to a lot of them recently, and especially with First Law, and I've got a lot to say about audiobooks, and we are an audio-driven format, so it could be fun. But, something to think about. Guys, we're always thinking, and we like to...
I love that.
We like to get off the walls. We got to do 3 episodes a week, and they're not all going to be books, so we got to come up with some kooky stuff every once in a while, so...
No, I think that's awesome. Like, I mean, we can talk more off the air, but the idea of
our favorite audiobooks,
something like that. Or I was thinking even as a recommendations.
That would be
like
good
it's
too.
Putting a call out on Twitter for you could what are your favorite audiobooks? Because I feel like there's something. It's like Stephen Pacey for the First Law. Mm-hmm. Like there's something that I've read those both ways, and there's definitely something different when you get the Stephen Pacey experience of Joe Abercrombie's work.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible. That would be my number one. So you guys got the early preview here, but I've got so many more in my mind I'm going to save for when we eventually talk about it. But whether we do it as a recommendation series or as like our favorite in fantasy discussion,
sure,
I'm open to both. I love the recommendation series, so I'm always down to do that. But oh man, revisit some of our favorites. Man, I mean, we'll always find a way to talk about Kingkiller Chronicles, and so.
Oh yes, that one's coming on. So. Nick Podell is the voice of Quoth to me. It's like you just. I don't know. I can't. Even when I read the physical copy of that, I just hear Nick Podell's voice in my head. I mean, I'll save that for the episode to get into that.
And Patrick Rothfuss himself did Slow Regard, and I got a kick out of that.
Yes.
I thought that was fun. So, well, we'll get into it, guys. But for now, just wanted to say thank you for the support. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking around with us through all these shenanigans. And if any of these things of our interest to you and we cause you to pick up one of these, well, that's the most humbling, amazing thing that we could do. And we love to hear that. So
we love it.
We love it. It's so much fun. We just we had so many ideas that we've been planning that we just needed to take some time to explain it all. And we hope this was coherent and entertaining as well. I'm entertained talking about it, so that's always a good sign.
We always try to strike that balance of coherent and entertain right in the middle.
Yeah.
Sometimes we veer a little too far. I don't know. Hopefully we veer. Can you veer too far in the way of entertaining? Probably not.
Yeah.
Maybe too far away from cohesive.
Yes. That you
or whatever,
do.
Coherent.
Yes.
Yes, like Friends Creating Fantasy sometimes. Not when you have the wonderful and talented Spitbo finalist Levi Jacobs on, though. That was so much fun.
That was wild. That was so much fun. I love working with Levi, so...
He's the best.
That's another thing we got to add to the calendar. Witch of Wealth and Ruin came out. We're going to have to read that and talk about it. So we'll have to find a place to put that in.
And maybe get Levi on again.
I hope we can, but
we love having Levi
He's
on.
invited if he's not busy. You know, the guy's
selling fruit.
And he's writing like crazy. I mean, he just dropped Daughter of Flood and Fury within the year, and now he's already published the second book, and he's working on the third one, and then he's got, a whole life activities around him. He's a very interesting guy. And
Family man,
prolific author. So if we can get
he might even be Lord Grumpy Dark. We haven't ruled him out of being running the Lord Grumpy Dark account.
He has the most to gain. He's up there in my list of suspects, and I will get the identity of Lord Grumpy Dark one day over on Twitter.
Yes, that's at Lord Grumpy Dark on Twitter.
Hashtag who is Lord Grumpy Dark?
Hashtag who is LGD?
Oh, who is LGD?
Hashtag who is LGD? Yeah, and we're always trying to crack the case on here, Charles, of who is LGD, and we have not ruled out Spiffbo finalist Levi Jacobs by any means. We haven't even ruled out each other. You might be Lord Grumpy Dark for all I know.
Yeah, but Levi Jacobs is the most obvious choice, but I highly suspect you as well. You and LGD just align too much in tastes and eclectic fandoms and things, and I find the timing of some of your tweets to be very suspicious.
Say Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift.
Yes, we're both fans. That doesn't mean we're the same person. Taylor Swift is one of the most popular artists of all time, okay? So it just so happens that two people are huge fans of the most popular, maybe, I would say that's probably fair, right? The most popular artist maybe in the world. I don't know. That might not be fair.
Not like the most, but one of the
one most.
Of. That's fair.
Yeah. So you're going to have more than one fan in the world.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're a suspect, but there's others too. I mean, fiction fans, when we go onto their collab, I'm going to be listening very carefully for clues that might give away if one of them is LGD, because I highly suspect Sarah. And then, Lily's been awfully quiet when the accusations
So maybe she's spending all that time running the LGD account.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I'll also say that booktuber extraordinaire Sandra Gibbons has never denied being LGD, which I find suspicious.
And they communicate, quite a bit. So I'm having a feeling that maybe they're maybe she's, having this conversation, trying to deflect attention on herself as potentially being LGD. And there was this connection with Shadow and Bone, the Netflix series that they had.
Yeah,
that
they
was
both love
very
Darkling.
Suspicious. Very suspicious.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yep. So Sandra is under investigation as well. We will get to the bottom of it. No one is safe, and the truth will be revealed. But that's for another day, guys. If you have no idea what we're talking about, I'm so sorry that you had to sit through that. But it's part of what we're trying to do on Twitter is uncover this guy. So I think we've done it, Dylan. That's like the immediate future. It's, a couple huge series, a couple new releases, and a couple collaborations as well. And it's an exciting time to be a co-host on the Friends Talking Fantasy podcast. I'll say that.
Charles, it's always an exciting time to be a co-host on the Friends Talking Fantasy podcast for me, because I get to do it with you, my lifelong friend and co-host.
You're going to make me blush now. And thank you so much for the kind words, Dylan.
Hashtag mission make Charles blush. That would be easier than hashtag mission make Charles cry.
Yeah, but, we already did that, and I've not forgotten about that episode. So
you haven't cried, though. That's the problem.
We haven't read any of those books. We gotta get those into the rotation, which who knows? Maybe they will. Maybe I've said too much already, but who knows? It might happen. But in the meantime, guys, thank you all for listening. I think we gotta wrap this up. There's no way this should hit 50 minutes. Sorry.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
So, Dylan, I think we just gotta get the outro music up. What do you think?
Let's get that sweet, sweet outro music pumping, Charles.
All right. Thank you all so much for listening to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy podcast. If you like what you heard today, guys, if you want to be reminded of some of these releases we were throwing at you in this episode, you want to talk about some of them as they're coming out, the best place to do that is over on Twitter at the FTF podcast with a number 1 at the end. And then also Instagram is a phenomenal place, and that is at the FTF podcast. Now, Dylan, if they like what they heard, they're supporting us on the socials, they want to support us even further, and they just so happen to be listening on Apple Podcasts, what can they do?
toss 5 stars to our podcast. Just find that Friends Talking Fantasy page on the Apple Podcast app, click the Friends Talking Fantasy page, and then scroll down past all those episodes until you start seeing stars. Once you're seeing stars, the optimal number of stars to click in order to support the show would be 5 of them. If you've got a little bit of extra time, then writing a review can be extremely helpful for a podcast like ours. But just listening is more than enough.
Guys, thank you all so much for listening to this particularly out there episode. We appreciate your time and your patience and your interest. We, really appreciate all the support. Thank you so much for listening. We love you. And as always, go forth and conquer, friends.